5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining me as they do every Thursday in the 9 o'clock hour, the crew from MGoBlog. They are back once again. The boys are back in town, starting off first with the man that started it all at MGoBlog, Mr. Brian Cook. Brian, how are you?
The bus was late, so I'm not in a good frame of mind to talk about what we have to talk about. Very annoying, but I'm going to try to keep it together.
All right. Seth Fisher. Seth, how are you?
I'm having even a rougher time. Rod Moore changed his number to 9, which looks just like 0 when you're 3 a.m. trying to do like film study. And like you got two guys in the secondary with like circular single-digit numbers out there. Like, no, you can't do this to me, Rod Moore. I can't have that happen and then talk about other things today.
If Rod has his way, it'll only be this season. I guess Mikey will only be around one more year anyway, but Rod is aiming for that too. But Craig Ross. Craig, how are you?
I'm doing good. Unlike those guys, I had a good experience. I was up late watching the Braylon Fest last night with Alex Strain, who'd never seen the game. And he has this idea that he's going to go through a lot of old games that he never saw with me, which are games that I all saw. And we're going to chit chat about them. And maybe he's going to write about them. Brian may not know this is happening, but his theory is to put them up on MGoBlog.
I've been informed.
You've been informed. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I mean, whether this is an
style of management here.
Yeah, whether this is a good idea or not, I don't know, but it was interesting. So we'll see.
So, guys, I believe it was about a week ago today that, at least looking back, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it started being postings. I think it was on MGoBlog's message board where posters started saying, "Hey, look, Shemy Schembechler has a really questionable, to say the least, offensive might be putting it lightly, even social media history." Now we didn't get wind of it, at least I didn't, until around Friday evening. By that time, it is a full blown storm, and it was clear to me at that point that he wasn't going to be long for that. He wasn't going to make it through the weekend with the job, and ultimately he did not, as he was removed the very next day. So take me through the chronology of events first, Brian. Second, your reaction to how it played out. And then third, was there any surprise? You could answer those in any sequence, but what I found interesting is that there are a lot of people that I guess who were familiar with him on social media who weren't surprised that that this is something that was discovered when looking at his history.
Yeah, and I think that's the real problem, is that as soon as Shemy Schembechler was hired, I had this sort of like sense that there was something wrong with this. Like that, like I knew kind of like, I don't think that's like a kind of guy you want associated with the university, but nobody in the athletic department apparently did. And there was an ESPN article that was like, yeah, we ran a background check on the guy. No, you didn't. You didn't. If there's publicly available information on Twitter that you didn't check, you didn't run a background check. And I mean, so this is my guess as to what happened, is that Harbaugh went around everything and just was like, yeah, we'll hire you, and caught the university pretty flat-footed, because I mean, a guy with that kind of social media presence just can't work for a university, or probably a Kmart. Like, I don't know what his employment prospects are going to be going forward. He issued that statement, but nobody believes that statement, right? Because I mean, you spent years endorsing some pretty racist stuff on Twitter. Like, you didn't have a change of heart because you lost a job. That's not the way this works. If anything, he's probably going to double down. Anyway, so yeah, it's an unfortunate pattern that's been going on with the Mel Pearson thing, with not suspended Mozzie Smith even for a half against Indiana after the gun charge, or his arrest. I guess the charge came later. Just kind of ongoing public relations problem. And now you've got people at the Athletic writing articles that are like, Michigan, embarrasses itself once again, and you're like, okay, there's like a couple of those in there that are a little bit sketchy. Like Matt Weiss, what was the university supposed to do? Like they fired him immediately. But yeah, it's at this point, it's a pattern, and it's something that is a problem for you. And I don't, I don't know what you do to fix it.
Seth.
Yeah, I mean, the timeline of this is 2 months ago. People knew that Shemy was around the building. I don't know if he was officially hired or what his position was or whatever, but Harbaugh was doing a bow. He was trying to do a shout out. He was trying to do he's trying to give a position to the son of Bo Schembechler. And I don't think there was any other qualification that really was part of that. So they had 2 months, not just 2 days, but it only took less than 2 hours for our message board to go and find it, because that's what you do when you hire somebody and you see a name and you go, okay, I wonder what this person is like, right? Someone, my kid's going to go play at somebody's house. I look up the parents' social media real quick and just see who this person is. And I want to make a couple things very clear. There were very white supremacist ideas that he was endorsing on there. It wasn't just one tweet. It wasn't just one thing. And it was going to be a major problem if Michigan held on to him, because they were going to, Ohio State could show this to any recruit and be like, hey, this guy's in the recruiting department. Like that was, it was a cut and dry situation. And it's just such an own goal. They had 2 months to know this, and it wasn't like they didn't. It's not like people didn't recognize this was happening. It's not like people around Michigan don't know Shemy. He's been around for a very long time, and to get to that situation where you have to get pressured to do it is just this might be like, as far as how organized you need to be in order to run this department. This was a major screw up, even if the event itself was minor.
Yeah, as always, I'll be in the minority. This to me is a non-story. This would be like, this was an unimportant position. This was a favor by Harbaugh to a guy who was out of work. Now, I would never hire the guy from my one experience, let's call it, with him, because it was unimpressive. But Harbaugh apparently has a long history with him and decided he was going to find a job for him because he was out of work. But this job wasn't much higher than janitor. And once the university figured out who they had on their hands, they got rid of them. They never announced a hiring, as far as I can tell. I think Shemy announced his own hiring. And then 2 days later or 3 days later, a firing, quote, firing was announced. To me, non-story. The university, the athletic department probably did nothing wrong here. Maybe they should have been more careful in checking social media. But again, the big problem for me out of the athletic department is their lack of transparency. And it seems to me, if they made some effort to be a little more transparent about what's going on, the public relations wouldn't be quite so bad. And I think that's true in the Mel situation. I think it's true here. But again, this is, I don't know, hard for me to get too worked up over this particular story when they fired him 2 days after Shemy announced that he had been hired. I mean, what exactly did they do?
I can't call it a non-story when there are lots of stories about it.
I can, because this is make weight stuff. And maybe Michigan needs, and the athletic department needs to be aware that they're an obvious piñata. And so they need to be more careful. But really, I mean, to me, this is like a nothing.
More careful? Like they weren't careful at all.
We don't know, because they're not transparent.
We do know, because they tried to hire a guy who's basically David Duke, but he worked for the Raiders for a while.
Well, I agree. I never would have hired the guy to be a dog killer. But
listen, hey, this is the part that was surprising to me was not that not that people were able to uncover things, right? Because people go and look at this. Let this be a lesson to the kids. It's not just what you tweet; it's what you like. It's your social media habits. But that there was such what was a surprise to me was that there was such common knowledge that he was out there with his beliefs. Maybe people were surprised that about the racism aspect of it, but there seemed to be a lot of knowledge in the space that he was, he was pretty extreme in his belief system. So that didn't raise a greater level of scrutiny into him on some level is a bit surprising. I guess my biggest takeaway from this will be, all right, this made it be clear across the board that no matter who it is and no matter what the level of the position, you said it's a level above janitor, that the amount of scrutiny that goes into them is finite, including a thorough social media inspection.
I think that's the lesson. You're right.
Well, so I've long posited that what football teams need to do is they need to have a kid who's about 16, 17, who does nothing but play Madden all day to make the decisions at the end of halves. And so what the department needs is they need the most brain poisoned person on the planet who's like on Twitter 24/7, just as they're like, we're too online liaison, because they would have snuffed out the Shemy stuff way before any of this happened.
That's a fair point.
So I got a couple candidates. Seth?
No, you're not getting rid of me that easily.
Was it on the blog, by the way? Was that where it first started coming to?
It was on our message board. Yeah. Well,
I mean, I think it started percolating up in several places at once. I know that there were people on Twitter, multiple people who were taking screenshots of his likes, and there were people on the message board who were like, I don't know about this. So yeah, I mean, it really is just an own goal, as Seth said. And I think this was pretty predictable from Shemy's reaction to the Robert Anderson stuff. Like, Bo's other kids didn't react in the same way Shemy did. And I know that's very difficult situation to find yourself in. But as Craig said, I was not impressed. And so for this to get this far and for it to blow up like this does feel like, Michigan's head coach is kind of a loose cannon, and these kind of things are going to happen unless you have a pretty good process in to vet and like stop these things from happening, which is clear Michigan doesn't really. So,
well, I think it's probably the case that because look, the tweets started tagging. So it started tagging UMich football, and Santa Ono, who's on Twitter more than my niece. So if he's seeing this stuff, I don't think there's any. That's how I was like when I first saw it on Friday. It's like, oh, he's done. There's just no way that this makes it past the weekend. I say that to say, if this brings to the surface that vetting of social media isn't as thorough as it needs to be, obviously not. That this is that inflection point, if you will, because you got the king of all presidents on at least of universities anyway, as far as Twitter is concerned, seeing this, and that is in and of itself a sign that this will be something that you don't see happen.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are all right, but the big issue to me isn't so much, I mean, maybe it is an issue, I don't know, but if they hadn't have fired him and hadn't have fired him right away, that would be a scandal. That would be a big deal.
But here's the thing: it's the equivalent, it's the PR equivalent of not having your leg on the post when the puck's bouncing off the boards. It's an easy thing. And that's what this is, a very easy thing. There was a cut.
Seth, did you have to say that? What are we?
Yes, Ryan.
Why did you bring that up?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think the simple explanation is the obvious and simple explanation is the right one. Is that it's Shemy Schembechler, and so because it was Shemy Schembechler, He was hired, and it was just he was hired, and the process probably or wasn't as intensive as it would have been, or as it will be moving forward. That now, if someone with profile, that you're already familiar with, is put in front of for any position, janitor even,
Yeah.
that person is going to get a much tougher, much more intense look than they would have gotten before this point.
I mean, I this seems sort of sui generis. Is that like I don't know if there's another human being on the planet who has vague football credentials from working in the NFL and is that stupid to put those likes out there.
This was my off-air take. Was that yes, this is in incredible stupidity aside from anything else, incredibly offensive. He shouldn't have a job here. That's all true. But, but this is only a PR scandal. And perhaps a negligence scandal by somebody. But since the athletic department is so, they're not transparent ever, it's hard to know what went down.
I mean, fundamentally, Craig, this is a PR business.
Yeah, well, I hear you.
I mean, like
you're changing my mind a bit.
This is a situation where the university has a certain reputation, and people will choose to attend it or not based on that reputation.
Yeah. I hear you. Maybe I'm just wrong.
So, here today, gone tomorrow. It was announced on Wednesday. He was. This part I agree with you, Craig. Look, there was no quibbling once it.
I mean, I'm not going to give him any credit for that.
Yeah, well, they don't get
they let him resign on Saturday.
Here's where I sort of, is running into some very clear. Hey, this is just his social media not his opinion. If he just erases it, and then you had some folks in the football family that were trying to help him out and trying to get the thing squared away. It's like, man,
no,
you can't do that. There's just there's no salvaging this.
No.
And so I only raise it because I know that sentiment existed.
Well, and there were some people who were like, well, what about Donovan Edwards? Yeah, one 20-year-old guy making a stupid like on a tweet and then getting hell for it is different because it wasn't a years-long pattern of flatly racist behavior. And
yeah, because you can see it percolating on
trans and
you can see it percolating on Twitter. One of the things people were saying, they're hoping this blows over. They're gonna try to just drag it out and hope people forget. And no, and this was as soon as I saw this, there is no way he makes it through the weekend.
Have you met the internet?
So he didn't make it through the weekend.
It always goes to show, like if you put on your Twitter profile, retweets are not endorsements. They still are.
They still are.
They still are.
Yeah, that'll be the lesson. So, someone, not that we should be giving tips to people who subscribe to racist ideology and out there theories, but you don't just have to post them to show people that that's how you lean. That's what you believe. There are other ways in which you can show that, and this is a textbook example. So
you also need to have a filter for what ideas come into your head, and that's part of that's a bigger thing, and that's why that's why this became a story, is because it touched on other issues. It was not how much damage can one assistant recruiting, whatever his position was, it's because it touches on everything else that we live in right now. One of those things is that crazy ideas get in.
It raises a point. So the biggest reason why I think people were thinking that this could blow over is because some folks are trying to make this a political thing. It's like, hey man, I get it. I get how there are some political, sort of tie-ins here, but this level of stupidity it transcends politics. It goes far below. It's just right and wrong.
Well, it used to. But this is a sports talk show. So.
Yeah, so we won't get into that. But my point is, you can actually draw the line even among those who lean in the direction that Shemy leans in politically.
Look, if that
You
guy
can draw a
was
line for them.
an usher at a movie theater and those likes became public knowledge and that guy would be fired yesterday. There is no job outside of like Newsmax that Shemy Schembechler would have held after that became part of the public record.
Yeah,
No job.
I 100% agree with that. What I'm not sure of is how aggressive an employer has to be, for a movie usher, for example, in checking his Twitter accounts.
Well,
I mean, is that
no. When I worked at a movie theater, half the people there were baked out of their mind the whole time.
correct?
That's a different situation.
And
but
I'm not sure this is much different. I'm not sure this job is a lot different.
Very different because
His name is Schembechler as opposed to Jones.
Because he's working for the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And he wouldn't have been working for Michigan if his name wasn't Schembechler.
There are certain
Well, that's for sure true. I think you're right.
We place on employees at the University of Michigan that we do not place on 17-year-olds sweeping up popcorn.
Well, I'll tell you what, to close this out, I mean, if Donovan had thousands
Right.
of examples of, unbelievably offensive belief systems, then it would have been a different story.
Yeah, but I mean, people agree with the sentiments, and so they think he's on their team, and they're like, so this isn't a big deal. And it's like, no, it absolutely is. This is an embarrassment. And if you think this way, you're an embarrassment to the University of Michigan. So get off my message board.
My advice is don't be on a message board in the first place. But
that's so hypocritical.
Why?
You're like a walking message board.
I see references.
You're literally on a sports talk radio show right now.
I know, but
yeah, well, he was representing the University of Michigan, and they were going to have him recruiting black kids. I mean, it's like,
yeah. Well, from a million points of view, the guy, should not have a job.
Yeah,
and the question is the only question is, how does Michigan handle hiring this sort of position? And I guess the answer is, and maybe you guys are right, is you go in and you look at all the social media accounts before you. You just have to do that.
You have to.
And so I'm probably just wrong because I pay no attention to it.
To social media, right?
Yeah.
Look, man. I was totally in the dark about this until Friday evening or afternoon is when I got wind of it, and so it was like, man. And what's going? He said, I thought it was a joke at first. Like, come on, someone made this up, right? And then you look, and it's like, man, it's impossible for him to clean this. It's just no way. It's too much.
Apparently he tried.
And he still wasn't done.
I just love the idea of him going into his Twitter account and unliking 6,000 posts. Just like sitting there for hours being like, whoopsie.
You would have thought, a few hundred in, you'd be like, oh, this is ridiculous. Let me just delete the account.
Exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. He got a few hundred into like 4,000 tweets, and then they scrubbed the account.
Yeah, it's like, how far does this go back? Till Tuesday. God damn it.
I think you can say that, Ira. I don't know.
He's fine. You're fine.
We got to get to a break. Brian's been on fire lately. We got to get to a break. Be back on the other side here. More MGoBlog Roundtable at Sports Talk 1050 WTKA. The ticket.
Clear on the radio, and Brian, you're fine.
Just
all right.
Hitting the like button, like to unlike all his stuff. Just sit this. Oh God. What an idiot.
I don't even know what I don't even know what this means.
So
to hit the unlike button or to hit it's a thing.
On Twitter, you can either reply to a post or retweet it, which puts it in your timeline.
Right.
And or you can like it, which doesn't do anything to your timeline, but like tells the person that I enjoyed this post.
Okay.
And then if you want to unlike a post, you have to go back to the post and hit the like button again, which will unlike it.
So it sort of neutralizes what you did originally.
Yeah, and so there is a page on your Twitter where you can see all the posts that you've liked. I mean, people sometimes use it as a bookmark too. I use it as a bookmark. So Yeah, and then he's just like on this like screen of like the most horrible racist stuff you can think of, and just like hitting that heart button. It's a heart button too. It's a heart.
Yeah.
A little
It's a
heart.
heart.
It's a little red heart.
And
Well,
it's just like wow. What made you think that this wasn't going to be he clearly thought just by liking it, it was not going to show up.
Yeah,
It was different.
Yeah.
yeah. And like it is true that you have to go on to a particular page to see someone's likes, but they are public.
And people do it. So that's the other thing, Craig. People, so
Mhm.
you get on Twitter,
yeah.
they're gonna go to your page, they're gonna look and see all your posts, and then they're gonna click that tab that says your likes, and they're
Well-
gonna go through what you've liked.
I think with Shemy, like he already had like sort of a reputation. So if it was just some random guy named Buck Showalter, that's not a good name for a random guy.
This random manager of the Orioles.
Right. So, but like if it was just some random
Orioles anymore.
guy,
Yeah.
then it's possible you might have gotten away with it because people were just like, But I think Shemy had a reputation already at that point because I had some sort of disquiet when I heard that Michigan was going to hire him because I was like, isn't that guy kind of? So I'm sure other people knew that and were looking.
You know what? And I guess I hadn't heard, or I didn't hear when I was talking to people about this. I didn't hear as much reference to his Twitter activity as I did his Facebook activity. Like
Facebook activity is worse.
they say he is. I know Ira said I had more than one person, including Ira, say I had to stop following the dude on Facebook because he was just out there.
Oh,
Correct.
wow.
So what happened here? Harbaugh hires a dude because he feels sorry for him and he knows him since he was a kid.
Yeah.
And he goes to Ward and said, "We're hiring this guy," and Ward says what? Or goes
He
to
doesn't go to Ward.
Who does he
didn't
go to?
Ward. There's no way he went to. There's no way that, 'cause that's the whole problem. There was no process on the top of it.
I mean, he's
There
got to
needs to
get.
be
He's got to tell
one
HR to
word.
cut a paycheck, right? Like if he's been in the building for 2 months, is he doing
I
that
mean,
pro
was it-
bono?
was it-
Has he been
actually-
paid?
Was it actually official yet? See, I don't know the answer to that.
There's
Yeah, I
no
didn't answer that
announcement by
question
the AD.
No,
The
that's-
AD never
That's the
announced
FOIA
it.
question that I'm sure they're paying
Yeah.
somebody to figure out right now.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's this culture in coaching of like, if a guy doesn't have a job, you need to get him a job.
Mhm.
Like I mean, you can see that. Like
Back in
No.
about 20 seconds, guys.
Yeah.
DJ Durkin has a job, right?
Yeah.
So there's really almost nothing you can do as a coach that will cause the network to not hire you. We'll
This is
see
one of the
about
reasons why you
Shemy.
see coaches very
Coming back on
reluctant to
radio, guys.
criticize
Stand
people.
by.
Yeah.
We are back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb and the MGoBlog Roundtable joins me. Brian Cook, Craig Ross, Seth Fisher. And so, guys, let's pivot and talk about Big Ten Network, Big
More
Ten
good
championship
news.
game, Big Ten night games.
More competence.
I mean, well, you know, this whole thing begs another process question
Yeah.
because as Pete Thamel reported on ESPN, the Big Ten is in a bit of a quandary right now, trying to figure out how to salvage as much of this deal he negotiated, the money, as much money from this deal that he negotiated as possible, because come to find out, they have to start paying money back and figure out how they're going to execute certain things that they didn't know they were going to have to execute. Money they're going to have to pay back from the Big Ten championship game that he sold to NBC, that he didn't have the right to sell to NBC because it's controlled by the Big Ten Network, which you would think the commissioner of the Big Ten would know, Brian Cook, and him promising in November night games in a league where the member institutions have expressed profusely their disdain for the concept of that, their disapproval for any exploration of that, and yet he went and negotiated that too. How do these things get to this point where, you know, the contract show, or they're talking to ADs, including Ward Manuel, and it's like, man, we're just not finding out about this.
Well, I don't know how much to believe that, because there's the article on ESPN that Ward Manuel is like, I didn't know about this. And then there's a link in this article to an article from 9 months ago where NBC is like, well, Rittenberg writes it, and Rittenberg writes that like NBC wants to have primetime games. And it's like, did you think that was like primetime? Like they're going to brand it Big Ten Saturday night or whatever in prime time. And like, did you think that only counted for 2/3 of the season? Now, I think they have a pretty easy way around the night games, and that's just like every game at UCLA or USC is a night game,
Right.
Mhm.
and that like fixes it. It's probably what USC and UCLA want, and the weather's okay, and those are going to be usually some of the more marquee matchups, right? You know, USC, Ohio State, USA, Michigan, USC, UCLA,
USC,
Penn State.
UCLA.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't. I think that you might see the occasional game that gets moved to Ford Field.
Now, come on, guys. This is a win for Michigan State. Do you not remember like every year when Michigan State's already lost the Michigan game and now they're tanking and like everything looks bad and like 4 people show up to their game in November? Like moving that to Ford Field is a win.
Yeah, well, they're like, well, we need the exposure, and I think Mel Tucker was like, maybe we don't need the exposure. Maybe
I
we
mean,
can
look-
just be at noon on
Well, I
Saturday.
mean, you're
He
measuring
promised
what's more
these guys they would play in an NFL stadium one day, and now he gets to make good on that promise.
What's more embarrassing, having a horrible season and having a senior day half full and getting blown out at home, or taking that experience on the road where there's at least an excuse for your fans not to come?
I think the senior day is going to be in like October or something.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it's November 4th.
First Saturday in November.
Okay.
So they're messing up their senior day. They're going to be in a situation where I bet that's 50-50 Michigan State, Penn State. And like, I remember when Dave Brandon sold a Michigan State hockey game after I bought season tickets.
Yeah.
And I was livid because it's like, okay, we're going to play this game in, where was it? I don't even remember.
Chicago.
It was Chicago. And like, if I'm a Michigan State season ticket holder who, like, I'm paying a PSL, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that PSL is based on the idea that I get some marquee home games. And then all of a sudden Penn State flits off to Detroit. I'm like, why am I doing this? So yeah, I mean, Michigan's not the only university that got some process issues in the athletic department.
Well, so they, in the article, which there was some parts of the article that I didn't understand. So one industry insider said the deal's not done yet. Yet another industry insider is talking like the deal is done. They're scheduling games. I don't know how you schedule games on a deal that isn't done. But at any rate, the piece that was really noteworthy was like, okay, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State are vehemently opposed to
Yeah.
November night games. But
I'm
you know, you
vehemently opposed to November night games. I have to be there.
I hear, but they said, then they say, all right, but Penn State's making some concessions. Ohio State made a concession. They're going to have the latest night game in stadium history, November 11th, when they host Michigan State. So they made a concession so far. Absent from that, Michigan. Sounds like Michigan isn't making any concessions here.
We got the biggest stadium in America. We got fans who are kind of ticked off about all the stuff going on with ads and stuff. I mean, that's a smart thing to do. Like, you want a concession from me? I have all the money I need. No, like, I'm not making a concession.
I don't think that's what it is. I think that they're going to make Michigan play USC this year.
That's fine. If we play USC in LA at
2024.
night, that's fine. I don't care.
I mean, yeah, but we're also playing Ohio State. We're also playing Texas, and we're
That was
going to
happen anyway.
Yeah,
You mean-
I'm
you mean-
saying that like when they're doing the schedules, it's not going to be a balanced schedule. That's my guess.
Okay.
My guess is
Right.
that Michigan State did some horse trading here, and they said, "Fine, we'll take the bad, ugly games." In return, they want to have an easier schedule.
It's fine. It's a 12-team playoff, right? I don't care about that anymore.
Yeah, I guess
If you deserve to be in, you're in.
I was wondering about that. Like, okay, you can. What did you get for making that concession? So that's an interesting theory there, Seth. But look, I was under the assumption that Michigan was going to be playing USC anyway, out the
Right.
gate.
When have they
that-
added anybody to the Big Ten and Michigan doesn't play them immediately?
Yeah, that was going down.
Yeah.
So You know,
Remember the Penn State series? They're like, oh, Penn State's in the league. Michigan's going to play them right away.
The interesting thing to me about the Thamel article, and this is a quote, there are no long form contracts been given to the athletic departments, which includes the fine print details, which to me says there are no contracts. I mean, anyone who's done this stuff knows that the devil is always in the details, always in the fine print. They're always the make or breaks in contracts. And so I'm not sure that anything has actually been agreed to. It's like me walking into a BMW dealership and say, "Hey, I really like that car." And they're saying, "We'd really like to sell you the car." And then we talk about the fine print detail, which is what's the price.
So, you know, I it started a preliminary sort of exploration into this. So this is very, very tentative and preliminary, my understanding. But one thing that I was hearing from a former Big Ten higher up is like, look, you got to understand. So the Big Ten has their agreements with the schools, right? These media rights agreements with the schools, and then the Big Ten, they go out and they make these deals with the networks. And then there's a process of making these things align, things that they may promise that, you know, is there some interpretation among the schools that, hey, because you can't really promise that, or, you know, are we really obligated to do that? There's this reconciliation of things. Ira brought up an example that's not totally related to this, but he said, hey, Maryland just came out and they were going to do a pay-per-view video thing on their website, and the Big Ten came in and said, you can't do that because we own all the media rights to your website, you know, all the video rights to your institution. So what I think is going on here is that the Big Ten, they went and negotiated this deal, right? Making some promises for things that they thought that they can promise that maybe the schools thought is this really something that is in that they contractually can offer? Maybe we have some leeway that we can fight some of these things. I think that dance is kind of going on now, and I agree with you, Craig, that there are some things that they haven't seen yet. Because that was another tip that I got. Said, don't assume that ADs and presidents have seen this deal. I hadn't read that quote, Craig, but I was looking at my text messages that don't assume that presidents and ADs have seen this deal yet. So I don't know how you could do that though, and think that there wouldn't be some sort of hiccup like this, or how some sort of hiccup like this hadn't happened before this point. When the institutions and the conference have done battle. Michigan had an issue with the Big Ten over media rights and what you can do on your website with video and that kind of thing. They had a back and forth about that back in the day. So it's not like this has always been this hunky-dory, kumbaya, we're partners kind of thing. They've been, you know, doing this a little bit over the years, and I think this might be another example of that.
Well, the thing that really leaps out about the Thamel article to me is that there's a section where it's like people are debating whether Kevin Warren should get a bonus for this.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty easy to me.
Well, it's not even in his contract. It said in there that bonus isn't in his contract. It's like they're just going to do him a solid.
Yeah. Right.
This is mind blowing.
Here's your bonus, negative $65 million.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and the most incredible thing is they hired an outside search firm to make the decision over whether he should. So they're paying more money to decide whether Kevin Warren should get a bonus for pissing away $65 million. I'm not so sure that's a hard question. In fact, they could hire the four of us. They could give us $5 each and we could give them a one-word answer.
I'll do it for free.
Yeah, that'll me too.
It's going to be, I'm interested in seeing what the considerations are for the concessions, to the point that Craig was talking about, and how much leverage the schools have to bend, to acquiesce to what Tony Petitti is asking. Because that was the other thing. I mean, was he saying, look, do it, or we're just going to impose it on you because you aren't going to have a choice? Or do the schools really have some sort of leverage where they say, you know what, we aren't doing it and there's nothing you can do about it? You know, I don't know the answer to that question. You know, can you just say I'm not playing a November night game, period? You cannot schedule one, period? Or is there something in the contract that says if they say you got to do one, you got to do one?
They
If I
made
had to
Michigan
guess-
play that stupid Indiana game a couple years ago. Like it's happened.
Yeah, if I had to guess, it's the latter. And Michigan, if the Big Ten's like, okay, Ohio State's at night, which it never will be. Good job, Fox. We like you. But if they said that, I don't think
So why are they
Michigan would have
calling
a
it a
choice.
concession then? That's what I'm saying. Like what? Okay, what's your incentive to make a concession? Like what are you giving me?
I don't know. I mean, like, this is a cooperative organization, I guess. So, like,
Yeah, I would be feeling not very cooperative. Based on you're not cooperating with me if you aren't representing my interest in this deal.
sure.
Right?
What are they going to do? I mean, is Michigan going to threaten to leave the Big Ten? No. So
Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go to the Big 12.
right.
We're
We're going to go to the ACC where they pay the big guys more in the ACC. They actually let you keep your money when you go to the playoffs.
It would
instead
be
of having to
new.
share with
That's new.
Rutgers.
That's new. We'll talk about that in passing on the way out. But yeah, the whole idea, you know, Jim Delaney got his big bonus because it was in his contract to get a bonus. It's not even in this guy's contract.
And he left. Like, what? You think he's gonna come back so he can screw up some more stuff? Like, what are we doing here? This is, I mean, the executive culture in this country is just bizarre.
Yeah. My last thing, because I said, you know, things I want to find out. I want to find out what they're getting for making this concession. But the bigger thing is, what's the process? So he negotiates this deal. How abreast of the goings on? Because this is like the thing. I understand if the institutions aren't aware of what he's doing, the minutia of what he's doing from day to day on every single decision, but this is the decision. So you would think that they would have some idea, some greater idea of what's going on with this negotiation. It just sounds like they didn't. So what is the process? Who does he keep in the loop? Is it the presidents? Is it the ADs? Does he just negotiate and tell them after the fact, completely after the fact? How does it go?
We don't know, and that's the problem. And in fact, it doesn't seem like the athletic departments even saw any contract. I mean, that's how I read the Thamel thing, is that there was no contract that the athletic departments could actually read.
It's never good when you're thinking about an executive's actions and you're reminded of a scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Because this is like Kevin Warren packed all the Big Ten presidents and ADs in a van, and then he cut the brakes, and then he screamed "wild card," and they jumped out of the back of the van.
Well, the other thing that's mystifying to me is how could Warren think he can sell a game that he didn't own?
I have no idea.
I mean, how do you sell a game to NBC when you don't own the game in the first place?
I bet he didn't know that.
Oh, then that's why he deserves his bonus.
Whose job is it to know that?
See,
It's his job to know that.
Yeah.
right. And if that's the case, then it explains everything else. It explains it. Then that explains everything else. That explains how you get to night games without anyone's knowledge and all. Yeah. If that's truly the case, which I'm not saying it's not, Brian. I'm not saying it's not, because I don't know any other explanation for how he could do that. Maybe he thought he had power to change that. I don't know. But to sell a game you don't control is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, that one is just, I mean, the other stuff you could sort of figure out how maybe he would assume X or Y, but on that one, and then to be talking about a bonus, and then to be hiring someone to figure out whether he deserves a bonus. I mean, this is just bizarre. I mean, maybe it's right. Brian's right. It's just the corporate world that I don't understand.
Thing I've been saying a long time was that people who are in charge of things are just in charge of them for no reason, and like that just bears itself out. You get this guy, and it's like, oh my god, this guy is like he's the best. He's like we can't live without this guy, and then it turns out that guy is just a guy, but they're like, oh, we got to give this guy millions and millions of dollars when it's like, I mean, he's replacement level. Like,
I wonder if he thought he controlled the Big Ten network.
I mean,
commissioner. I wonder if he thought that.
I don't know.
I think by the fact that he didn't know means that he was under replacement level.
It's possible that
negative war here.
Yeah,
possible that he didn't care, because it's like, all right, so I was with the Vikings and I was like, that's fine. Now I'm in college. I feel like a defensive coordinator trying to recruit people. I hate this stuff. I want to go back to the NFL. How do I get back to the NFL? I'm gonna negotiate a really cool top line package, and then I'm gonna bolt to the Bears, and then people can figure out the rest of the stuff that I screwed up later. And now he's with the Bears, and the Bears can't be like, because he wasn't racist. He was just stupid. So they can't get rid of him. So he's home free. I need to buy a suit and get an MBA and just kind of wander around looking cool, and then people will give me millions of dollars for no reason.
I've tried that. It hasn't worked, but maybe
Did you try the looking cool part, Craig?
Yeah, I thought, but it didn't work.
Well, real quick, you know what looks cool when you make it to the postseason and you get all the money that your program makes when you make it to the postseason. That is the new model in the ACC. You know, the Magnificent Seven programs that they talked about meeting at ACC meetings with Jim Phillips, and you know what are they talking about? Are they talking about getting out of the grant of rights? What could they be pushing for? We got a clue from Mike Alford, the AD for Florida State, a few months back, where he said, look, all the schools getting the same thing doesn't make much sense. Florida State shouldn't be getting the same as like Wake Forest, right?
Yeah. Wait. Yes, they should.
Why?
On-field performance.
Okay. Well, okay. What Florida State aspires to be, right? What Florida State aspires to be, if they get to that point, they shouldn't be getting the same thing as Wake Forest. They should be getting more. As should Clemson, right? And that is what the ACC has agreed to now. That the institutions, whether it's in winning in the NCAA tournament or winning in the postseason in football, instead of getting the money, subtracting your expenses, and then splitting the rest evenly, now the institution that achieves that goal or makes it that mark is going to reap the financial reward from that as well. They believe it'll maybe add another $10 million to the coffers of teams like Florida State and Clemson. What say you about that decision?
Well, if that's what they feel they have to do to keep the league together, I guess that makes sense.
They better watch their officiating. No, I'm serious.
How is that impacted by this?
If it's a zero-sum game, if you get 10 million or zero, you know, you better be careful on who's officiating your games and how and what it looks like.
Is this for NCAA postseason or conference postseason stuff?
No. So it sounds like to me it's just like bowl games and playoff.
Oh, okay.
If you
Clemson
qualify for
doesn't
the
share.
CSP, so you get that extra money, every unit you earn by getting into or winning a game in the NCAA tournament, instead of splitting it amongst the conference evenly, it would in the ACC, it would go all to that one school.
Okay, so like the ACC can't like conspire to be like, okay, we're gonna funnel this money to Wake Forest.
No.
So there you go,
But
Craig.
what they're going to do is
That's not an
now they're set
answer.
up for the fact they're set up for their dissolution. When you have a conference like this, if you're not revenue sharing, you are basically setting yourself up for a future where it's not. As soon as Florida State leaves, Wake's going to make the same amount because they weren't going to get that money anyway. So you're creating the origins of the destruction of the ACC is what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
what choice they have.
Maybe we can give them Rutgers.
Maybe this is just staving off the inevitable, Seth. I mean, you know, you're prolonging.
They are, because the end game here is that the players are going to get a piece of the TV contracts. These schools are all putting themselves in a position where they can afford that. The teams are jumping in the SEC and the Big Ten right now. That's what they're positioning themselves for, and that's what these teams in the ACC are positioning themselves for. Yeah. That's what the schools in the rest of the country are positioning themselves for, and that's why it's important right now.
Yeah. All right, fellas, you have a happy and safe holiday weekend. Appreciate you as always. Love my roundtable crew. Go to MGoBlog.com. Check them out. And man, lay off, Brian. You know, don't make lights on. I'm talking about whoever it was that was,
Oh,
I don't know what they were putting on the board that were driving you.
nah, it's all right.
Get off his
All
message
right.
board.
Sorry.
Get
Get
in.
off of my message board.
We got to get out of here, folks. We're off tomorrow, so we'll see you on Monday or Tuesday here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, the Ticket, the official voice of University.